And we are recording.
You're listening to episode 185 of The Graveyard Shift. I have somehow managed to say that sentence in the same tone 185 times.
186.
186!
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
One
Good
job.
job. You got one job.
I don't think I'm alone in saying I think we've been doing this for too long. One job. I mean, that's true these days now that you're editing them. I'm looking forward to the season of life where Alan edits them. we get back a 3-minute clip that's like a file that only opens in Windows Media Player.
That's funny. That's good.
Let me just check out that reference on Yahoo.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's flip this switch quick because we know we have tended to be long-winded.
So we're not going to even say hello?
No, we're this is part 2. We're going straight in.
Hello, listeners, viewers.
Hello, listeners.
Previously
on
you're here.
Previously. We know that you're looking for ways to distract yourself from the mundanity of life, and the inanity of our greetings together are not relevant.
We could be a couple weeks into a new openness in Ireland, right? May 18th. I mean, that's when it's supposed to be opening up a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows?
There's a chance I'm actually going to get to see my family in the next couple of weeks, which is pretty exciting. So
and very overrated.
Wow. I don't think it means your family, Scott. But let's take that up wrong anyway, because it's funny.
Not your particular family.
I think my parents will have something to say about that.
Not your particular family, just family in general. I think that I could happily exist in this place the rest of my life.
This has been sort of your dream. I mean, like this has been what you've been looking for how can I do ministry and not interact with people? I know. So speaking of which, Greg, how have you arrived at this wonderful position?
I'm sitting in my bedroom doing a podcast with 2 Egypts.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
That's the dream. Yeah. That is the dream.
Yeah. Believe me, I ask myself that question all the time. It is bizarre. Actually, it does strike me every time I fly back into Ireland. This is my home. It's been my home for 30 years. Like, so, it's not like I've just arrived. Although Irish people tend to like to treat me like I'm not that I am Matt Damon, but they like to treat me like I've just arrived to our shores. Please tell us what you think about our lovely country. Oh, it's a fairy tale. Except for his goes viral.
If only you'd known that all you had to do to get the affection of Irish people was to go down and swim in Dalkey Pier with your towel and togs in a Super Value bag.
That's right.
Oh, Greg, you could have got there so much quicker.
I will weep myself to sleep tonight knowing that. But
I still enjoy the memory of taking you out for an Irish breakfast the day after I think you got your citizenship. Right?
Oh yeah, that was absolutely amazing. Yeah, absolutely amazing.
So what brought you into this, Greg?
Well, I mean, like yourselves, I was young when I first kind of felt like, I want to kind of do this whole like ministry life thing. Similar ages to yourself. You guys were talking about your teenage years. I was 15, went to Mexico. I know I've shared this story a few times, but was there just kind of doing relief work, I guess you could call it. But realistically, we were a youth group we help like an orphanage in Mexico. But they put us on the streets to start kind of meet families and whatnot. And I was solicited by a young girl. She was age 13 for prostitution. And she literally said to me, and I know I've said this before, but she said to me that, she would sell her body to me just for some bread and water. And I, through the translator, couldn't believe that this was happening. I mean, I was like 15 years old. How in the world is this happening? And I asked her why, and she said that her father had left, and it's just her and her sisters and her mother, and this is the only way they can make money. And then I said what it felt like a cliche at the time. I said, but there's got to be hope, right? In my 15-year-old naivety, but also just my desire that no one's hopeless. I know as a kid, I grew up in a broken family, and I kind of understood what it felt like to be hopeless, but at the same time, I wanted others to know hope. And so I said to her, well, surely there's hope, right? And she just said in Spanish and translated through that there is no hope. And I actually froze on the spot. I didn't know what to do with this information. It was definitely some sort of philosophical meltdown happening in my brain, even though I probably couldn't figure it out at the time. And I went back to our accommodation that night, and my friend and I stood on the top of a hill and shouted till we were hoarse, till we lost our voices at God, that this is not right, this is not fair. There shouldn't be 13-year-old girls selling themselves for bread and water. There shouldn't be kids with no hope. And I was only 15 at the time. And kind of like yourself, Scott, kind of those questions kicked in that, you know, I think I attribute to God, because I do believe in God, and I do believe that God speaks to us. And it was like, well, what are you going to do about it? And I'm like, outsource.
There will come a time.
No. And I was like, good question. I got to do something about this. And so I literally right then and there said, okay, God, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do my best to share a hope that exists beyond ourselves, and a hope we can find in one another. And it was really basic. It wasn't like I understood even what that meant. I know for a fact I didn't understand what that meant, but I knew at that point that I was going to do whatever it took to make sure that whenever there was a teenager or any other human being who said there's no hope, that I could say, actually there is. I'm sitting in front of you, and though I'm busted up and flawed and broken, don't have all the answers, I can help you as best I can, but I also believe in God who is present in our hopeless times. I didn't have that articulation at age 15. I didn't have my Superman movie moment, but
even in your story, you're mocking me. Unbelievable.
Well, to be fair, you did have that moment, but you had it with real people, not a film.
Not a film with a guy with tearing his pants on the outside. And so I literally decided that if the opportunity arose, I would do whatever it took. And so genuinely, the next year I went to Hawaii to visit my uncle who was working with Youth of the Mission. And while I was there, it helped that it was Hawaii. I'm not going to lie to you. God spoke in Hawaii, if you know what I mean. No,
always does.
Yeah, always does. No, but I actually, when I was there, I was asked to kind of travel throughout Asia and working in areas of in the arts and in justice. And I was like, well, what do I have to do that? Well, you have to be here. You have to live here. And I was like, okay. So I called my mom. I said, I'm not coming home at age 16. And I literally left home at that point. And I didn't see my family for 2 years. And so it was quite a bizarre, it was like that moment happened and I knew I had to make a choice. And though I didn't understand the implications of that choice, I made it. And that was the beginning of my journey.
Wow. And what was it then how long did you spend in Hawaii? What kept you there? And then why did you leave?
I was there for a couple of years. What kept me there was the lady. No, what kept me there was, I'm joking. I was 16. It's true.
I've never met a 16-year-old with clear motivations that they understand.
Yeah.
No, Hawaii was a great place to live. I had a great job. I had a girlfriend. I was being promoted in the work I was doing. I was traveling a lot into Asia. I was loving it. Although I was spending all of my money. Like I get paid on a Friday and I'd spend it all before the next Thursday. And so for another 10 days, I had no money. I was 16, man. And so
I was doing that till I was 29. Don't worry about
it. And so, but no, and when I turned 18, I was hanging out with a bunch of Youth of the Mission kids, and they're like, "We're going to go do your Bible school, it's called the Discipleship Training School. We're going to do this Bible school." That's what every 18-year-old does. It's an assumed thing. And I was like, "I'm not doing that." They're like, "You have to. It's kind of what you have to do. It's a rite of passage." And so I was like, "All right, what's the opposite of Hawaii?" We're like, Scotland. And so as a joke, applied to Scotland to do a discipleship training school starting in less than 3 weeks from that moment. And a week later they accepted me. Come to find out, it's because I was a guy. There are 21 girls and 3 guys. I like the odds. And so
may the odds be ever in your favor.
I'm not sure what film that's from, but
it's a terrifying Hunger Games reference.
Oh, yeah. And so anyway, so I went over to Scotland to do my discipleship training school, stayed in the castle there outside of Glasgow. While I was there, I'm jumping through hoops here, but I met some Irish people. They invited me back to run a camp in Kilmore Key in '89. And so I did. I came back in 1989 to Kilmore Key from Scotland, and we did a 1-week camp. And I spoke at it and did some stuff. And they're like, afterwards, a guy came up to me from Youth of the Mission Ireland, and he said to me, "Look, we like your style. We like who you are. Would you ever consider coming back and moving to Ireland?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Call me in a year." That's what I said. I was so sarcastic and disparaging, like, right? So
I would have given anything to have met you during this time, like anything. Like, I'm just surprised you didn't say, "Yeah, sure, call my agent."
I'm just thinking you were so sarcastic and disparaging that he's like, this guy's going to fit right in.
Quite possibly that. So anyways, the upshot of it was that, believe it or not, I traveled for the next year and doing, again, a lot of youth work, a lot of kind of missions, justice oriented stuff, but also encouraging teenagers, whatever. A year later, he called me and said, "When you want to come to Ireland?" I'm like, "Sure." I mean, it wasn't like, this is the thing. My whole life is not like these massive, I see God all over in all these things. I really do. It's not me trying to justify a situation either, but and so I literally said, yeah. And I came back to Ireland. I moved to Ireland just before, in early 91. And my job was to set up a schools team. There was no such thing as an ecumenical lay team that went into schools that did these day-long retreats that were popular back then with clergy, with priests in particular, and nuns. And so I set something up in 91. And basically, yeah, over the next 12, 15 years, worked with 250,000 students in Ireland alone, trained 1,500 leaders, a lot of things you guys are involved with. That's where we started kind of all cross-pollinating our paths and stuff like that. Yeah, so yeah, it was and I never left, basically.
Well, it's rare that you hear somebody's story where somebody doesn't go over and back from a central point. Do you know what I mean? Like, so for a lot of people, their story would have been, I went from Michigan to Hawaii, then I came back to Michigan to try and figure out what I was going to do next.
Right.
Whereas it doesn't actually seem that happened. You kind of like went Hawaii, Scotland, Ireland, traveling, Ireland.
Now, part of that, to be fair though, Scott, part of that traveling was going back to America to earn some money in the middle of that, and meeting my dad for the first time and all that kind of stuff, my biological father. So that was, there definitely was a moment there when I kind of went into Michigan and back out of it again.
Okay, gotcha.
But no, I was pretty convinced from that age that I was just going to be doing this the rest of my life. I mean, I to be fair, I moved on from Youth of the Mission after nearly 9 years of running their youth department there, and joined an arts community, helped run the work there in music and arts and schoolwork, and then got involved with Church of Ireland youth work and then young adults work. So it's all been kind of similar stuff, but constantly kind of evolving.
Yeah. And that idea of, that conversation in Mexico where you're talking about, but there's got to be hope, right? Over the last few years, you've kind of shifted away from being in full-time youth ministry development towards more creative stuff, like it moved more into the arts world as like a storyteller. I mean, you've always been a storyteller, to be fair. I saw your school retreats.
Fun.
I was there. But you've always been a storyteller, but you've moved into like kind of visual arts and filmmaking and stuff like that. How does how has that desire run through this like trajectory that you've been on? That idea of like inviting people to know hope.
Well, I think for me, I think that, the first music video I directed was like 12 years ago. And so, so the creative thing's kind of always been, so like, but, and I moved on from youth ministry in 2013. it's been 7 years. It's interesting because I think that I've always been curious about the process. So when I arrived to Ireland, they're like, there's no young people in our churches. I'm like, well, where are they at in the schools? Well, we need to go to the schools and we need to invite them in. And then we get to that point. So, well, there's no discipleship or leaders to look after the youth, or no youth groups that existed. So we're like, okay, let's create youth groups around the country. Let's train leaders to and they're like, yeah, but when they get old enough, they have no churches to go to. Then, so then I was part of planting a couple of churches. And so I've always been kind of like trying to answer the next question. But in the midst of all of that, I found the thing that for me personally, the most effective way of answering those questions weren't just kind of systems and structures, but telling stories well. So if you can help an organization tell a story well, or a teenager or an artist, or if people can articulate their inner life well, then that benefits all of us. And so I think the whole arts thing just gave me a little bit more fluidity. Now, I was playing in bands in Ireland since 1992. So I was a touring artist, a musician for 20 some years, and so then I would be making music videos, and then other musicians would ask me to do those, and before you know it, those turned into films and whatever. So but I think that if you even every bit of work I do, it doesn't even matter if it's like, I mean, every music video I shoot, or every short film I make, or anything I write, hope is definitely that central thread throughout all of it. A hope found in one another, a hope found in God. And so I think the arts have just helped me, have given me an opportunity to explore that in a more, for me personally, expansive way.
Has the baseline changed much? I mean, because like when you give that background, like in that conversation with that 13-year-old girl, you can very much see how can I get across hope with the question that you wrestled with then shouting and screaming at the top of that mountain hill. How you then, like, how has the baseline evolved for you personally in the things that you do? So the call that God has in your life, in that to bring it that there is hope, how has that evolved in your own walk? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll try to answer it. If it doesn't, just
I'm sure you will.
No, but I think that like I think I've become attuned to, and definitely become a seeker of hope. So I seek out places that show hope. I seek out people who show hope. I seek out people who write about hope, or podcasts about hope, or and so I think I've become quite attuned to my radar. My hope radar kind of is quite. I wish my language was as attuned. It's my radar for hope. But do you know what I mean? It's like I feel like that when I see it or hear hope, I want to give it a voice, and I want to give it an opportunity to be seen. I want to I want to turn the spotlight onto that, and I want to articulate it in a way that people can better receive it. So I think a lot of where it's changed is, instead of just questioning where's the hope, I've become someone who seeks it out, and he tries to amplify it.
Cool.
I mean, and I think that, and I don't want to be, I mean, that can sound almost vague. I mean, I'm talking about very practical stuff. I'm talking about, walking alongside people who are like, whether it was Tear Fund when we were on the border of Syria, or whether it was, with John Perkins talking about civil rights in the American South, across America actually, or whether it's Shane Claiborne and death penalty, or the list goes on. Those projects are things I lean into much more and feel, to use that word, really well intentionally. I feel like it's something I want to be involved with. Right? Every fiber of my being wants to be involved with that area.
Well, I think, I mean, for people who do know you, that they will know that you're not one of just words, but there has to be action within those words. And so, look, even, on being on the receiving end of how can we pray for you? And in that, we mean, what can we do? Because it's not just, they're not just words. And I think that's, I mean, like I mean, for someone who communicates so well, where words can be used so much, and there are communicators that's all they do is they just talk. Where actually it's not just a world, and I think that's where I'm going with the baseline of, is there hope? It's not just a wordy, oh, let me give you a story, but it's actually it's proactive, putting these words into action so that you can have this opportunity to grab and to feel tangibly, if that's a word, tangibly hope, that it's action, not just words.
Yeah.
You seem to be like, you're amazing at like kind of following the heart of this stuff and taking the opportunities in front of you and trusting that God is in the process. Have you ever wondered if you made the wrong decision in following any of these different goals, or
Oh, I know I've made plenty of wrong decisions. Like, here's one of the things, and this is not meant to be patronizing. Here's one of the things about getting older, right? Mm-hmm. Is that you realize that wrong decisions have been made and will be made, but that's not my identity. It's not gonna affect my overall trajectory insofar as that I'm aware of the decisions that were probably not the greatest, or the paths I've taken. But I was quite confident and patient with the fact that I believe in my friendships and in God that they'll get me back to that right road again. So, there's been a couple decisions, or a couple paths that I went on for an extended period of time that I knew it was time to get off of at certain points, but hung on for too long, and wished I would have stepped back quicker. Wish I would have trusted the God-given instincts within me to have stepped back quicker, to avoid hurt, or to avoid, a bit of hurt, bit of pain, bit of lack of trust, kind of that kind of erosion of relationship. But I think that although I am not the type of person who goes, woohoo, thank you God for those horrible moments, I am a guy who goes, okay, that happened. So how can I learn from it? And how can I avoid it next time? Or better yet, how can I help? How can I make better choices next time? And even more so, I think, how can I help others avoid bad choices that I've made?
Or be prepared.
And be prepared.
Because I think even, and that's what I was, when I had said in our previous episode about those regrets, I think that's very much it, in looking back of, maybe staying in a particular place too long when actually the signs were there before, and actually not leaning into that because of fear, because of what does this look like, and I think
no matter how long you've done what we do, no matter how long you've tried to pursue the right conversation about your future or about your now, getting it wrong is just part of the process. It's just part of the journey, without sounding trite and throwing it away, because those moments can be quite painful and can definitely erode your self-confidence and definitely can make you feel alone. But at the same time, you go, okay, that's part of who I am now. That's part of my ever-evolving shape, and that's okay. It's okay. It's not great, but it's okay. And I think that it also helps me be much more empathetic to others who find themselves in similar situations. What about you guys? Sorry, Scott, you have a question.
I was just reflecting on the idea that I think we can sometimes grow up with in Christian culture, that when people say God has a plan for your life, they hear it in the singular. Instead of hearing God saying that to a group of people about his overall plan, we hear it to us as individuals about a singular plan. And it has this mentality of like, and if you step out of it, well, then it's game over. Like it's one strike, you're out. There's no do-overs. There's no readjustments. There's no redemption. And people can get really, really caught up on that, as if there is only one path for you, only one thing God can do with your life, and only one season in which he is present, almost. Like if you didn't make the right decision at 19, well, then you're only getting further away from him at 30 or whatever. And I definitely feel like in my regrets, like I wouldn't be who I am now if it wasn't for all the things that I regretted. I mean, I'd probably be better, but I still wouldn't be who I am.
But would you though?
I'm being facetious. Probably not. Probably not.
But the thing is, we just that's the one thing as well, is that we can't. This is the life we've chosen and we've lived. So even like getting worried about even thinking about what it could have been like if I hadn't made that decision.
Yeah,
it's kind of, in a way, I don't mind those exercises. I think they're good exercises to do, but sometimes it's not going to change where I'm at now. Where I'm at now is where I'm at now. And am I at peace in that place? And if I'm not, then why? And then maybe wrestle with those things.
Yeah.
Well, and God is in the place I am right now. So I shouldn't go and seek to be anywhere else other than where I am. Yeah. I think if I was to look at one of the regrets on my journey, I would regret, it's a big category and there's a lot of things that can slip into it. I can regret how much the way in which I wanted to be perceived has played a role in my life. So even the way in which I got into ministry, like being affirmed by a youth leader and feeling like this was the one place where I really mattered and where I could make a difference, more people believed in me. You know, that fact actually drew me into ministry, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but then it had a domino effect later on of like wanting more of that. And then also I definitely wanted to be seen for a long season of my life that you both will remember very well, because I came to you at various points in it. I wanted to be perceived as like, you know, not your ordinary Christian, you know, like, and so like I wanted to be like super talented, but also rebellious, like doing things differently, but also managing to make them work well. Like all of those things, kind of like you talking about, like, you know, why stay in Hawaii when you're 16? It's like, because God called me here, and the girls, and like, you know, like my mind was not clear enough at that point, and I think I actually took a while to mature emotionally. So I think in my early 20s in particular, but all through my 20s, I'd say that played a huge, big part in my life, and I wouldn't change that in order to change where I am right now. But I probably would change that to look at some of the ways that may have hurt other people at the time.
Yeah.
And that's a tension I'm holding. I'm not saying I regret being where I am or what this journey has made me, but I do think I could have loved and served others well if I hadn't been subconsciously dominated by that. So I wish I'd got my act together sooner.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, Al. I can echo that as well. I wish I would have got my act together sooner, and my family would also agree with that.
Yeah.
But I think, sorry, go ahead, Al.
No, well, I was just going to say, I think when we do look back, it's reminding ourselves of going back to the baselines. Like even Scott, what you were saying about for that question that was being asked of you in the car, you know, from God, like there's a baseline as to you are going to do this. Like, what's this going to look like? And I think it's going back to the space, and it's even going back to the spaces where, you know, because I know that there's areas of our story that we're not going to share because it's too treasured. You know, and something thinking, you know what, that's not for other people to know. There are maybe one or two that know this, but this is,
for sure.
You know, that is important. But I think that those regrets, they're real. It's if we're living in the shadow of the regret, then there's a problem. You know, but I think it is, like even Greg, what you're saying is like, I can look back, I can regret, but I know then how to move on, prepare myself, and actually to share what I've learned in a gentle way to those around. You know, because I think with any regret, we can either have bitterness, or we bring in the hope. We bring in, you know what? Yeah, this, because I think I used to have a time where it would have been a case of any regrets. No regrets whatsoever, because you know what? It's all been part of what has been my journey. Yeah. And I'm thinking, no, and there's actually, if I've no regret, it's like having no scars.
Yeah.
You know, everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people really like to, hey, do you want to know how I got this scar? And it's a story. And in those stories, then we get to share what we've learned. And what would you do it again? Well, I might wear something different, or I might come across it in a wiser way.
He's still talking about going to that birthday party dressed as the Hulk.
I don't want to bring that up again, but I was 25. I thought I had friends. Yeah.
but Al, do you actually have, looking back, I mean, obviously you said there's some stories you don't want to, it's not for this place, but like, do you have like Scott was saying there, about his identity and where. What about you? Did you have anything that you would look back and go, man, I wish that wouldn't have been such a central thing in my life that.
I I I don't know. I mean, I think, yes. I mean, I know that there's been definitely certain seasons in my, like, I mean, I know that there's been churches that I've been involved with that I was under the fear of what other people thought, and being in that then shaped set certain things. And I look back, and if I was able to go back in time, I'd tell myself, you're giving things up here that actually it's going to become hypocritical, and hindsight gives us 2020 vision ironically in this year, but as I look back, I mean, I definitely know, you know, the me today would actually pull the younger me aside and say, don't you dare give in to that crap. And I think that that's something that I know, and I can very clearly think of 1 or 2 years where there was living in under that fear of what other people thought. And when I say other people, bosses in particular, where I'm kind of going, I did things here that I compromise, and being someone where integrity is so important, trying to honor the leadership that was there, but also wrestling with, this is just utter, like, they haven't a clue. And not having the integrity to make that stand and say, this is wrong. This is absolutely wrong. And I will say, in that, learning incredibly so from my wife, you know, Rue, where being in one particular conversation and Rue just asking a particular question, you know, to a group of people who were in this space and position, and me sitting there going, I love my wife so much. I mean, it's just amazing. And not that it was never seen or noticed or accepted before, but it was just like, this is reminding me of who I'm called to be. Because she's sitting here saying, don't take this crap.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh wow.
Yeah.
And I think that there's an honoring in that of actually having to. So there's definitely, like Scott, what you saying, a kind of, you know, seeing and wanting to be this particular person. I think for me, it was almost the other way of kind of going, not wanting to be who I was called to be because I was fearful of what bosses at the time thought.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely hear echoes of my journey and both of yours as well. You know, the whole identity piece, you know, who am I? How am I being perceived? You know, the acceptance piece. Why is it that people, you know, still see me as X when I'm really Y, you know, or whatever it is. And then I would also add to it, just, you know, if I had any, I mean, with a kind heart, I would wish that I would have spoken up regardless of consequences more often, you know. And actually, if there's anything anything I appreciate about the arts is that it does give you an opportunity to do that. If there's anything I appreciate about the artists who, that I know who are not under a certain theological covering, let's say, although they're certainly in tune with God, that they're able to speak out without the consequence of losing a job or their knuckles or whatever it is. So I think that if there's one regret, I think looking back, and if there's one thing I constantly would encourage myself on, it would be that, still to this day, is with a kind heart that always precedes it, speaking out regardless of consequences in areas of injustice or in areas that I think that are not correct. And that can be that's quite a wide screen there. That doesn't have to be just one certain area. I'm just talking about across the board.
Yeah.
So I think
I'm just even on that. I definitely feel myself falling into that trap of being like, it's too soon to do what is right, and I'll keep saying that up until it's too late to do what is right. You know, and like, you know, like, oh, well, I'm not in the position yet, or I don't have the security yet to be able to do this as a lifestyle. You know, all these different excuses. There's a lot of times that I look back on as well, absolutely, where I knew what the right thing was to do, and I either didn't have the commitment or the courage or the love of the person who would have been helped by me doing it, or the courage to face people who were unhelpful in the situation.
I mean, is it weird, Scott? I mean, like we should be, and if anything, we should be creating communities that celebrate the people who call things out instead of people feeling fearful about calling things out or concerned about the consequences or all the things you just said there. Like we should be going, yes, listen to this person. You know, what they're saying is true. And they're like, yeah, but I'm going to lose my job. Fine, we got your back because what you're saying is true. Instead of what tends to happen is someone speaks truth and everybody's like, ooh, you know, they slowly move away from that person in case they might lose their job over it or might lose their something that they tarnish their identity or whatever.
I think. Yeah, and I think as well, like even in stuff that I caught most of what you were saying. Sorry, my bad. But the whole idea and the concept of what our baseline is, we're always going to go back to what we are passionate about. You know, so like I mean, for me, it's always been that discipleship aspect. You know, of what it is to be a follower of Christ, so to imitate and to be Jesus, and then to reflect Christ in all that we are. And so that then covers a whole multitude of stuff. But I also know, well, I have no authority or right to kind of go down some of these other different things. But when I hear people come in, talk about the things that they're passionate about, I go, yeah, totally. I mean, if that's your boat, go knock yourself out and go there. And it's not that I don't agree or subscribe to it. I do, but I also know what my baseline is in my sphere of influence, because it is. There was a question that was asked of me before getting into Anglican ministry. Was a case of, do you want to be influenced local or national? And that was a key moment for me as well. Even thinking, am I going to be content with it, Scott, as you're going through that wrestle of, you know, to travel and to go and to have the different audiences, different spaces, and to be able to have and I don't mean this in a derogatory, but the hit and run mindset is, oh, wow, I can leave with questions and go, and I go somewhere else, and you can get traction in that way. Yeah. Or am I actually willing to go, and the regrets that I think I talk about, everyone else in my community go, oh, we remember that regret because we were there too, you know. And actually that conflict or that paradox that goes on. And I think that it's when we know where our baseline is, that when everything else gets stripped away, we get back to that space of, this is why I do what I do. This is why I am who I am.
Well, in some ways, I guess the moments of change in our stories are kind of like our true north.
Yeah.
So whenever we heard that question or we felt that sense of calling or invitation into something, even if we responded to it with, even if the way it came to us and the way we responded to it was based on, in some way, upon our mixed understanding of it, that true north of you know, of hope, of creating a space for people, you know, of serving and helping people find home and identity, like those things they keep coming back to us. And it also means as well, I guess, that the times in which it probably plays a part in the times in which we have done right and the times in which we have done wrong, you know. Like sometimes, like if we have a heart for creating a home for someone, you know, a place for people, and then suddenly we have to make a choice where, like, we put that thing in danger, you know, like the stories that started us out on this and the driving motivations in them can also be, you know, the areas of deepest regret where we had the chance to do something or we, you know, we should have done the right thing, but because we were so framed by this original founding question, we missed the opportunity that was in front of us. But it's okay. Like, I think I take a lot of hope in the idea that the opportunities keep coming, you know, like it's not over. And the redemption within the story it's not just a selling point to outsiders. It should be a lived experience for us. And very often when people talk about regrets, I mean, it makes me crazy when I see, you know, like, you know, only God can judge me tattoos, or like, you know, or, you know, I don't regret anything.
I love the idea of getting like a no regrets tattoo, but spelling regrets wrong.
Oh, like in the We Are the Millers, no regrets.
No, I don't know that one. But...
Oh, it's actually from it's
is it?
on someone's chest and it's spelled RAGRETS. It's
I just thought it'd be funny. That's good.
You were right, Greg.
Yeah. But sometimes people can talk glibly about regret. Well, I don't regret anything, you know. Like you only regret the things you didn't do. It's like, yeah, well I mean, actually, there are some things I do regret that I didn't do, but there are also things I regret that I do. Because guess what? A healthy inner life means being able to see things in the cold light of day and be like, that's the moment where I was not.
But I think it's interesting thing, Scott. Yeah, I think that's interesting because I think I would have more regrets about things I hadn't done than things I have done. Yeah, that's me personally. And so I think if we were doing a split chart on regrets that you have of things you have done, be like whoop, things you haven't done, to be like whoop.
So 18 to 25 is things I did, and 25 onwards is things I haven't done.
but in saying that, like, I think that, like, I mean, I think one of the things I enjoy is that I've learned to be patient with myself in that process still, and in this process of life a little bit more. And I also now realize that I'm drawn to truth tellers, and because I want to be one too. And I think we're drawn to the things we want to become as well. And so I think that I'm trying to get to a position in my life now, whether it's with my work with the diocese or with my work in the arts, that I'm celebrating those truth tellers and giving people opportunities to speak. I've had lots of opportunity to speak. I'm like you guys. I spent 3 decades standing in front of microphones and talking to people, and and encouraging people and writing, and I love all that stuff. And I still would like to do some more of it. Sure, why not? But I think that I'm enjoying more these days giving opportunity to highlight others who are telling truths and exhibiting justice and taking risks, and then giving them an opportunity to capture that or glimpse of that and get a platform to, again, amplify it. Because I think that for me, that makes me content. And it brings me joy when I get to do those things. Probably because it is something that I've always wanted to be myself. And I've touched the hem of that a few times, maybe more than a few times, but I certainly would like to grab hold of that a lot more often.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should just have a time of reflection to think about all that's been said.
Hold on, I'm gonna get the Book of Common Prayer. We can do a confession and absolution.
It is interesting though. I think, Al, I think you make a good point. I think there is a time where you stop and go, okay, I'm gonna press pause on this podcast. I've done this when I've been running and listening to podcasts or even music, where I've pressed pause and just run for another kilometer or walked for another 2 kilometers, depending what I'm doing at the time, and really just processed it. Like in my life, what are the things that I wished I had done but can still do? I mean, wow, what a great list to lean into,
I think it is that when we think of when we think of all the different times, even that we're in now, that everyone is in now, of lockdown and thinking of reflection and looking at that, it's this is the time, of that, of thinking through and having those moments of, I really want to be, who am I? Like, who have I been getting to this stage? And then what am I going to be like after all of this? Because this is the life. And it is funny. Like, I know we were talking this earlier on about different chat shows that are getting on and how some are coping really well with the space they find themselves in. And others, actually, we realize, man, maybe that they're not funny. It's other people that are making them funny, so either whether it be canned laughter or the shock or the horror of what's going on, that it has to be a forced element, where we find ourselves in this space now of kind of thinking, well, who am I? How have I got to this place? And then what, even after this place, what I'm going to look like later, and after this, that legacy. So where do I lean into? you know, how do I learn from those regrets, you know, and actually bring them in a good way, not in a shameful way, or actually going to go, this is good to be vulnerable. This is good because actually this is the bravery. You know, this is what it is to be strong. It is to share those vulnerabilities, those moments of, yeah, I blew that. Yeah, you really did. You know, no, I know. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry. Or I'm trying to learn. Help me. You know, because I think those pausing and reflecting, we have time to do that, but it's knowing how to do that intentionally as well.
I think the best season of MasterChef is season 7. And my favorite life lessons comes in that season, where there's this you're coming up to the semifinals. Hashtag spoiler alert for a reality TV show that happened 6 years ago. Whatever, I don't care. Have you seen season 7?
I don't know.
Okay, I'm just going to go with this.
Go for it, Scott. Just go for it.
There was two contestants throughout the whole season who made it to like the final 10. And one of them, it seemed like she was in an elimination every week. The first thing she cooked was always barely edible for the dogs, let alone the judges. But then she would cook a second time while everyone else went up to the balcony to be a spectator. And there she would learn. And then there was another cook, and she did amazingly well. And she got really, really close to the end of the journey, but she never made it into the final. And one of the reasons she didn't is the first time she went into an elimination, she went out immediately because she had no idea, having messed up the first time, how to make things better and learn from her mistakes. And then when it happened, she couldn't handle the pressure. I always thought that was an amazing, like, kind of, you know, life lesson, is that sometimes we're taught, especially in the Christian world, where like self-righteousness and righteousness and holiness are a big deal in terms of the external life rather than the internal life, where people are taught to project the perfect life rather than to come to terms with their mistakes. And I don't think it's a problem having regrets. I think it's just tragic if you refuse to regret them. Like, no, I was right. That was the right thing to do. I don't care what anyone tells me. I was in the right there. Or, well, there were external circumstances that affected that. That's not my responsibility. To own this stuff is to grow. And so it's fine to have regrets as long as you treasure them as the thing that brings transformation, rather than trying to rebrand them as victories that you don't need to learn from.
Yeah.
Very good. Yep. Hear, hear.
Sorry, I didn't mean to epilogue that. I feel like a youth pastor in '93. Alan, I mean.
They were awesome epilogues.
93.
Oh, wow. What a year. How old were you in 93, Scott?
10.
Oh.
That'll sting.
Yeah, wow. that sort of hurts.
Yeah, Alan was just entering his 40s.
Al was just getting his first gray hair. All right, guys.
It's true.
Have a great week.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.
Blessings. Take care.
Bye.
I'm looking forward to the season of life where Alan edits. We get back a 3-minute clip that's like a file that only opens in Windows Media Player.